Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is author John Snyder, and he's here to share with us his Christmas stories. Now, John knows how to pen a story that's filled of love, hardship, and reconciliation that will leave readers filled with Christmas joy. John's first book, The Golden Ring, is a Christmas classic, and adding to that list is his new book, Jacob's Bell. In his second book, he returns to the historic Americana setting in the 1920s and 40s, set in Chicago and Baltimore in 1944, with flashbacks to the 20s. Both these books are extremely heartfelt, and sometimes teaching us that the road to forgiveness and restoration can be a rocky one. So let's welcome to the show, John Snyder.
Well, thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here. My goodness, we talked about Jacob's Bell last year. I'm excited to talk about both these books again because they're so impactful.
Well, thank you. I always look forward to sharing my stories, particularly Christmas stories at this time of the year.
Well, let's start with The Golden Ring, and the journey with that. Like, what got you even hearing the story or interested in it? How did that happen?
Well, actually, it was kind of a freak thing. A number of years ago, at Christmas time, I was visiting my grandmother in Western Maryland, in a small mountain town up there called LaVale. And we were just sitting and chatting at the kitchen table, drinking some coffee and eating some leftover Christmas cookies. It was a few days after Christmas. And I began asking her about her childhood and what it was like growing up in the early part of the 1900s in her hometown of Myersdale, Pennsylvania, which is a very small mountain coal town, just I guess it would be southeast of Pittsburgh. And she told me this most remarkable story about a Christmas in 1918 when she was about 9 years old. And I was just so intrigued with the story as I listened to it that after our visit, I was visiting from Washington, D.C., where I was living in that area at the time. So it's about a 2.5-hour drive to LaVale. And I was so intrigued, I told my wife and two kids that we're going to take a side trip. So we went in the opposite direction to Myersdale, Pennsylvania. And I just wanted to go up to the town because, I was so moved by the story. And so we drove in the opposite direction to Myersdale, where my grandmother grew up and where my father was born, actually. And the town remained a lot like I remembered it as a child when I'd go up there to visit my great-grandmother, Elda Beale. And when I arrived at the address of my grandmother's memories, I discovered that the house was gone. It was just a vacant lot, although I remember the house as a child. And I stood there. There was a little snow coming down, so it was kind of a neat moment. And I tried to visualize my grandmother's home and replay her story in my head as I stood there. And then I was obviously jerked back in the car and told, "Let's go,"
Oh yeah.
I just want to get home. But I kind of replayed that in my head the whole way back to Washington. We were listening to Christmas music, and I was just playing this thing through my head. And I thought, what a wonderful story it would be to write down and just for the family. And I kind of got carried away. Over the next few years, I wrote and rewrote different versions of the story and added to it and elaborated a little bit. And when I completed my manuscript, I really thought that I would contact some publishers and see if I couldn't get it published. But I quickly learned that's not an easy thing to do. So I contacted a number of publishers. I couldn't find anyone interested, and the advancing age of my grandmother served as a very strong motivation for me to complete my mission. So, I knew that soon, time would take her from us, and I was unable to find a publisher. So I decided that for the first year, I was going to publish it myself. So I laid out the book and got 5,000 hardcover copies printed and waited, with the anticipation for the books to arrive from the printer. And when they did, I made the 2.5-hour trip back to my hometown to visit my grandmother and give her a copy of the book. And I just couldn't wait to see her face as I handed her the copy of the finished book. And I have a vivid memory of her. She had on a bright red dress, and she had a big smile on her face. And I had arranged for a reporter and photographer from her local newspaper to meet us at the house, and they were going to do an article on my grandmother. And she was so happy that day. And sadly, that photograph that they took for the Cumberland Times News was the last photo taken of my grandmother. As she proudly held the book that that she inspired me to write. She'd never get to see the newspaper article because she passed away peacefully just a few days after I gave her the finished copy of the book. And she never really got to see the article, and we buried her the day before Thanksgiving, one day before the article was to be published, and with her we buried a copy of The Golden Ring. So that gave me a lot of motivation. So that year I released my self-published edition of my book in a limited number of bookstores in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And it quickly became a bestseller almost everywhere that it was available. And I sold out my inventory that year. The following year, I got a lot of publicity and things, so I thought I was going to try to do something on a larger scale. So I mortgaged my house, and I had 30,000 hardcover copies printed. And I got a distribution deal with Ingram Books, one of the largest book distributors in the United States at the time, and received much wider distribution. And I also sold the subsidiary rights of the story to Family Circle magazine, and they published a 9-page condensed version in their holiday issue that year. So in between October and the end of December that year, I sold almost 23,000 additional copies of the book. And due to that success, the following year, Warner Books, which is now part of the Hachette Book Group, signed me to a book deal, and they sold over 26,000 copies of the book, and also sold the foreign rights to a publisher in Germany, and it was published in the German language over there. So, I was pretty pleased with what I was able to do. I just wish my grandmother had stayed around long enough to see it, because I know she would be proud.
So why don't you share for our listeners a little bit about the story? Like how did it come that you and your grandmother talked about this story?
Well, I have so many wonderful Christmas memories from my childhood. We would always go to my grandparents' house Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and it was a very special event. And I had this love of talking to older people about their childhoods and how they grew up and what it was like. And so it wasn't unusual for me to talk to people about things of history, but never really talked to her about her childhood at Christmas time. And so the book is set in 1918 it's a small coal town, as I mentioned before, in the mountains of western Pennsylvania. And it focuses on the Beale family and my grandmother, Anna, at the age of 9. And she had 5 siblings and, of course, her mother and father. And she had a very special and close relationship with her father, Joseph, who was an engineer on the B&O Railroad. And throughout the story, their relationship becomes even closer as they share a series of mysterious and puzzling dreams where Jesus appears in the dreams, and he's talking about the giving and receiving of a special ring. And they both share this series of these dreams. Their search for the meaning of these dreams leads them on a journey that even caused them to share a more emotional and more close and bonding Christmas experience. And really, it lived deep within my grandmother's heart for the next 80 years. She didn't tell anybody about it, until I asked, and I'm really glad I did. And I encourage people to do this. I encourage people to talk to their older relatives and get these stories and write them down, because once they pass, these stories are gone, and they're gone forever. And it was such a rich part of our history, back in that time, and it's a shame to let these stories pass without having them memorialized. So the story basically addresses the goodness that comes from giving, the true meaning and spirit of the holidays, and it takes us back to a nostalgic time when things were simpler, and it's a book that really it's a family story. It's a book the entire in fact, I have a lot of people that read it together as a family aloud. But it's a story the entire family can enjoy, from grandparents to parents and down to children.
What a great story that is. And when you look at just the impact that your grandmother had, did she also help consult with the book at all?
All through the writing of the book, she was kind of my technical advisor. I would call her and ask her, did you have electricity, and did you have a bathroom, and all these different questions about the time period that she really helped me out with. And she was familiar with the way the story was going, but I was so happy when I was able to actually hand her a hardcover copy of the book. And I remember that day very vividly. She had on a bright red dress and a big smile on her face, and you could see the pride in her face when I handed her the book. And I had arranged for a photographer and a reporter from her local newspaper to meet me at her house. They were going to do an article for the Cumberland Times newspaper, and they snapped a photo of my grandmother holding the book, and unfortunately, she never got a chance to see the article because she passed away peacefully just a few days after I gave her the finished copy of the book. We buried her the day before Thanksgiving, and with her we buried her copy of the golden ring, and so it was that was kind of sad that she didn't get to really see what happened afterwards, because there was a lot of success that came from that. That year I released the self-published edition of my book into a limited number of bookstores in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And it quickly became a bestseller almost everywhere that it was available. And I sold out my entire inventory of 5,000 books that year. So the following year, I wanted to do something on a larger scale. So after a discussion with my wife, we decided we were going to mortgage the house, and I had 30,000 hardcover copies printed, and I got a distribution deal with Ingram Books, who was one of the largest book distributors in the United States at the time, and we received much wider distribution. And I also sold the subsidiary rights to Family Circle magazine, and they published a 9-page condensed version in their holiday issue that year, which gave me a lot of publicity. So between October and the end of December that year, I sold almost 23,000 copies of the book. Then the following year, due to the book's success, I had some inroads with some publishers, and Warner Books, which is now part of the Hash 8 Book Group, signed me to a book deal for year 3, and that year they sold over 26,000 copies of the book, and also sold the foreign language rights to a German publisher who published it in German, in the German language in Germany. So, I was really proud of what I was able to accomplish with the book. I just regret, and I'm so sorry that my grandmother didn't get to see that success, because I know that she would really be proud.
Well, I'm sure she's looking down on you from heaven, just thrilled with what you've done with this book and how you've moved it forward. I even understand that there was some interest in a movie for it.
Yes, actually, I'm still working on that. That's almost that's a lot harder than even the publishing thing. But I've written a screenplay based on the book, and actually the screenplay was selected as a semifinalist in the Search Screenwriting Awards and made it to the top 25% of the Page International Screenwriting Awards out of thousands. And it's been optioned twice. I haven't got it produced yet. I had some real interest from Ecolate Movie Studios. I worked with the president, Jeff Sheets, out there, and he was in love with the story. But unfortunately, Ecolate ceased its production operations, and now they're solely a distributor. But And he left the company, but before he did, he introduced me to a producer, Dan Angel, who is with Fezziwig Film Studios, and he's a multi-Emmy and Peabody Award-winning producer, and he's he's really behind the project, and we've been working on finding funding for the project ever since. So we've come close, and we're hopeful, but it's just really difficult these days. The movie industry and the publishing industry, because of technology, have really changed a lot over the last decade or so.
Yeah, that has really made some huge adjustments and changes. And so it's interesting just how much The Golden Ring and your second book we'll talk about here in a little bit, Jacob's Bell, how they've made such a huge impact during the holidays, but also year-round for people, even though they're both Christmas stories.
Yeah, and that's a mindset. A lot of times, I don't think the publishers take into account that people. It might be a Christmas book, but a lot of times at Christmas, people are really busy and they don't have time to sit down and read a book. So many times it's after Christmas till they read it, or it might even be the following year before Christmas. But people take them to the beach. I mean, people read. It's fiction, so it's you can read a story about the winter in the summertime and summer in the wintertime. I don't think it really matters. But, yeah, people have told me they've taken them to the beach. And then, like I said, it has wide appeal among the readers. It's families read it together aloud. It's appropriate for grandparents to parents to children. And it's been really well received, a lot of good reviews.
So let's talk about Jacob's Bell. What was the inspiration behind that book?
Well, unlike The Golden Ring, it wasn't based on any. I just love Christmas, so I'll see something, and I always have liked the sound of the Salvation Army bells ringing at Christmas time, and it takes me back to when I was a kid, and I do a lot of thinking when I'm cutting the grass or driving or whatever, and I kind of came up with this idea for a story about a Salvation Army bell ringer, and it took me a few years to put it together and write it, and again, going through the process of finding a publisher. I was a little more fortunate this time, a lot of it due to the success of The Golden Ring. It opened a lot of doors for me, but it's a story on how an unlikely friendship between an old man who's homeless and estranged from his family and terribly down on his luck meets a little girl on the street corner one day while he's ringing the bell for the Salvation Army. He's been taken in by a wing of the Salvation Army, and he's ringing the bell at the holiday, and how this strange encounter with this young little girl leads him back to his family and facilitates the reconciliation just in time for Christmas, and something he had longed for many years.
So when you talk about Jacob's Bell, I know it's been described by many as a heartwarming Christmas story. Is there a friendship that develops between the little girl and the elderly man?
Yes, actually, Jacob McCallum is the character's name. He is kind of hit rock bottom in life, and I often say that sometimes the road to redemption and forgiveness can be a rocky one, and he certainly experienced that. He on his arduous journey back to his family. At one time, Jacob had it all. He was a very wealthy businessman in Chicago. He had a wonderful family, and he was one of the most respected businessmen, in the city. And then along the line, Jacob made some bad decisions, and all that changed. And as you enter the story, Jacob is riding a freight train. He's riding from the West back to Chicago. And, for the past 20 years, he's kind of been in and out of an alcohol-induced haze. He's riddled with guilt for some of the dreadful things that he's done to his family, and an unfortunate role that he had in the untimely death of his wife. He was a contributing factor to that. So he was estranged from his family. He was penniless. He was living on the streets, in and out of jails, in and out of missions, jumping freight trains to go from city to city. And at some point in time, he realized that, he's getting old and he's on the downhill side of his life. So he decides to embark on a journey to find his children, seek their forgiveness, and hopefully reunite with them. And it doesn't go so well for him. He's rejected initially, and his sons still live in Chicago. His daughters moved to Baltimore, so he's trying to make amends with them, and it's just not going too well. And so he's kind of taken in by a pastor at the Salvation Army mission, and he struggles to transform his life with the help of this Salvation Army official to overcome his demons and kind of forgive himself, but not without a fair number of setbacks. And then one day he's ringing the bell. He's in Baltimore looking for his daughter. He didn't have very good luck with his sons. And he's ringing this bell on a street corner, and this little girl kind of is standing across the street and looks at him, and she just keeps looking at him. And finally she comes across, and over a few days, they become very, very good friends. And it's through this meeting with her that he learns a lot about humility, and he learns a lot about family, and actually through a series of strange coincidences, this little girl leads him back to his family and facilitates his forgiveness just in time for Christmas.
Do you feel that this story is really relevant for today?
Yes, it is, because family dynamics. It's we have it in every family. There's problems, there's issues. The holidays sometimes can make them better. It can make them worse. I think it magnifies a lot of these things. So, I think it does. And the whole message in the book is forgiveness, and how that empowers not only the person that you are forgiving, but it also empowers the forgiver. And I think it has a lot of relevance today. And with all the issues we have going on in our lives, with addictions and homeless families and families that are broken up, it just I don't think anything changes. The stories change, the time changes, the addictions may change, but in the end, the glue that holds a family together are love, faithfulness, forgiveness, these types of things, and I don't think that changes over time. So I think it's every bit. This particular story is set in 1944 with flashbacks back to the 20s and the 30s. And like I say, I think times change, things change, but I think the constant in all of our lives is family and love and forgiveness and all the good things that hopefully we were taught when we were young.
Well, it's interesting because the story does show a lot about forgiveness, where maybe some people have been taught that, but not everybody is. So it's a life lesson that I think a lot of people can learn.
Yes, and also, we have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves too. We have a lot of people have difficulty forgiving their own self for things that they've done through life, and I think we all have that from one degree to another. Some less, some a lot more. We have guilt about things, and maybe things that maybe we had an argument with somebody and it didn't end well, and we've now years have passed and we're still harboring these feelings. And forgiveness is a gift. It's a gift for both the giver and the receiver.
Now, it's interesting because Jacob Bell is really realistic with the number of setbacks that people encounter in overcoming addictions, and he goes through the same thing. Was that done intentionally?
Yes, it was, because I have some experience working with addicts. I was in my younger days a parole officer for about 8.5 years out of college, and so I've had experience working with addicts and alcoholics, and it's not an easy road. There are patches of really good behavior, and then something can come along and knock you right off the road. And so I wanted to make that as realistic as possible and show that it isn't easy. It isn't easy to overcome these things. It isn't easy all the time to be forgiven or to give the forgiveness. And it's not something that's easy. And I wanted to make that a centerpiece in the book.
Well, I mean, my goodness. I mean, this is the beginning of December. Everybody, is kind of looking at how we can add more holiday cheer, and looking to forgive and be forgiven, I think, is a big part of that.
Yes, it is. And I think, there are, I can speak for my own self. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I just know that in my life, I've been blessed. I have many, many wonderful childhood memories. Christmas is very special to me, the whole Christmas season, not only for the reason of Christ's birth, but just it's a time when it looks like it's time to me when everybody comes together for just a little bit. Even we become even closer with our enemies at times during the holidays, and I think it just triggers something in us that's the goodness in us, and we all have it in us. But we get busy with the everyday life, and everything is so hurried these days with the technology and everybody with their devices, and everybody's in a hurry. But I think December, we kind of, I think it's regardless of your faith. I mean, I think people in December, just because of there's just a heavy feeling of giving. And to me, in the month of December, and hearing those bells of the Salvation Army ringing in the background when you're shopping or you're out grabbing a bite to eat or whatever, to me that's just a constant reminder about giving and forgiving and all the other things that we should do 12 months a year, but at least we a lot of us get it done 1 month a year for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and your books are great reminders for people of what's important during the holidays and all year round.
Yes, it is, and if we could just take that message and take it into January and February and March, and some do, but I think we just get carried away with life. Life is not easy these days, and we're going in 20 different directions every day, and I think we just need. That's why I think if you read books like this and they stay with you, it has a tendency to have a calming effect and remind you and bring you back to where you should be and ground you a little bit. And so I think that's one good thing about literature and music. I think we all relate, with music to a certain event in our lives or whatever, and I think we do the same when we read a heartfelt book.
So what final thoughts do you want our listeners to take away from both The Golden Ring and Jacob's Bell?
Well, I want it to remind both the books to remind people of the goodness that we have in our hearts. I think both of these stories play that out. That we're all capable of good, we're all capable of giving, we're all capable of forgiving, and sometimes we just need to remind ourselves that. And I think that these books do a good job of that.
So if someone wants an autographed copy, how do they go about getting that?
Well, if for The Golden Ring, if you go to my website, www.john-snyder, that's JOHNSNYDER.net, you can purchase a copy of The Golden Ring there, and all those books are signed. Because of my agreement with my publisher, I'm not permitted to sell my Jacob's Bell on my website. But if you go to my website and you click the Jacob's Bell link, it gives you links to where you can purchase Jacob's Bell online. It should be available in all the bookstores, particularly at the holiday time. And for Jacob's Bell, there's a special section on my website where if you buy the book, you can click this link, and I have these book plates. If I'm not at a book, you don't buy it where I'm having a book signing. I have these book plates. It's a crack and peel, nice label with the title of the book on it, and I'll sign a message in there. You can do it all online. and I'll mail that out to the readers, and they can put it in the front of their book.
That's so awesome that people get to have that and have that as part of the book. You know, my goodness, John, we can spend all day talking about your books. There are great resources, fabulous gifts for the holidays, and something for people to gather around and read together.
Yes, and a lot of families do. They read it aloud as a family. And in fact, one of the years that when I was working on the Golden Ring, there was a radio station in Nashville that did they actually were giving copies of the book away and tickets to something else. Fathers would call in and read a section of the book and to their kids, and they would actually record it, and it was a pretty neat thing. But I get a lot of feedback from my readers that they bring it out every year. They read it as a family every year. And, it's been a number of years since this was published, but I still get emails and letters and cards from people that thank me for writing it. And, that is really what you want to receive as an author is you want to have touched people, and when they tell you how they've touched them, it's very rewarding. And sometimes I get letters about my books, from people, and something in the book made something better in their life. And I would have never figured out why or how, but they explained it in their letter. And it's very touching to hear that something you wrote affected somebody in a positive way, and they're thanking you for that. So that's very rewarding.
Gosh, what an impact that makes. That is just so impressive. Why don't you share your website one more time for our listeners so they know how to connect with you, learn about the books, and be part of your community?
Okay, yeah, they can go to john-snyder, John Snyder, SNYDER.net. And you can sign up for my newsletter there if you care to. There's a lot of information about my background, a lot of information on why I wrote each of the two books. There's a lot of, like I said, you can read the first few chapters of each book there. You can read some of the other books, chapters of the books that I'm working on now. And, there's press clippings, there's reviews, there's reader reviews, media reviews. There's a lot of information. It's a very comprehensive website. So, I invite people to go there and to surf around and hopefully sign up for my newsletter and stay in touch with me. I love to hear from my readers.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, Marianne, it was my pleasure. I truly appreciate it, and I want to wish everybody out there a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, and I hope that you're able to spend them with your family and your loved ones, and that you can appreciate the true meaning of the holiday and have some memories of your own. And remember, when you're gathered around and you're talking to your great aunts and uncles and your grandmother and grandfather, if you're still fortunate enough to have them, ask them about their childhood Christmases, ask them about their childhood stories, and write them down for your children. And because, like I said before, if we don't, these stories, they evaporate into thin air when these people are leaving us.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. I just love your stories. The Golden Ring, A Christmas Story, and Jacob's Bell, A Christmas Story are must-reads for the holiday season. They make the perfect stocking stuffer. If you'd like to learn more about John, you can connect with him on his website, john-snyder.net, for more information. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
If not me, then who? This ethos is driving the Travis Manion Foundation to empower veterans and families of fallen heroes to develop character in future generations. In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq while saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on in the 5 words he spoke before leaving for his final deployment. If not me, then who? Guided by this mantra, veterans continue their service, developing strong relationships in the community and thrive in their post-military lives. Visit TravisManion.org and ensure the character of our nation's heroes lives on in the next generation. If not me, then who?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Corin Grillo, and she's here to share with us her new book, The Angel Experiment, a 21-day magical adventure to heal your life. Now, Corin is an author and the founder of the Angel Alchemy Academy. She's a trained psychotherapist, angel channeler, healer, and teacher. She's helped thousands of people all over the world go from angel curious to angel powered. So let's welcome to the show, Corin Grillo.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, what a joy it is to have you here to talk about your new book. I am so excited. I love, love, love this book. Once I picked it up, you know, I've been like actually carrying it around, have things underlined. I'm sure you get that from a lot of people.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's happening. It's definitely happening. It's so great to hear.
Oh my goodness. Well, and so why don't we start with what inspired you to write this book? Because I mean, this is pretty intense.
Is it? You think it's intense?
It's a good intense. It's a good intense.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been working with the angels for a while, and really, it just, as usual with almost everything in my career now, the angels inspired me to write it. And I think we're at a place in time where the angels are really eager to reach the masses and really especially connect with those people who do not believe in angels and still think they're just beings in a book or some part of some mythology out there.
Well, I'm glad that you're sharing that. You know, as a kid, I was able to see angels. Not everyone could. They thought I was nuts, you know. So you look at this as kind of growing up and you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. Let's kind of scale this back a little bit and talk about this. Because if someone believes in angels, but maybe they don't see them or can sense them, is this still a book for them?
Oh, absolutely. This book was actually designed for the beginner, designed for people who have never acknowledged or have never considered that they've had an angel experience before. And the book really outlines different ways that angels connect with us. And we're all so unique. Not everybody is ultra clairvoyant like you, where you can actually see them. But we all have different gifts, and angels find a way to connect with everyone.
Well, I'm glad that you shared that. And I wouldn't consider myself, you know, ultra anything in spirituality.
I would if you're seeing angels, you got some clairvoyance going on. Come on.
There's something happening. Who knows what. Well, when was your first time that you realized that you had that deep connection? Because I know it's different for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, for me, it happened with a massive miracle that I witnessed. It was an angel experience. And it was after that I realized I was in communication with angels. And the way that they manifested for me was a lot through presence, through feeling. So I would feel a different energy wash over me, and this wave of peace. But yeah, they quickly started showing me how real they are through my outer life, through synchronicities and through songs piping in on the radio. And I think that's what I love about angels, that they can make it very practical, like life, they show up in our life as if our life is the angel workshop. And the more that you open up to them and start communicating, even if you feel like you have zero spiritual gifts, the more that you start opening up and asking them to show you, they often will.
Well, the subtitle of your book is A 21-Day Magical Adventure to Heal Your Life. So how does the magic work in healing people? Are these little miracles that happen along the way?
Yes, they can be. They're little mini, I feel like mini healings and mini portals into different healings. So each day I sat with the archangels, and a different archangel would come through and say, today, this is what we're helping people with. This is the attunement we're giving them. And so we developed invocations and also meditations to help. Step one, I feel, is decluttering your heart, mind, and body of energy toxins and actual physical toxins, so you can run energy better and become a little more sensitive to the spiritual world.
So what are some things that the reader and our listeners can do to kind of start on that process? Because it is a 21-day adventure, for healing their life. And you talk about not just being the physical, but we're looking at the spiritual and the emotional as well. What tip would you like to give our listeners?
To start off with, I feel like that one of the best things is that, the first step is just making a powerful proclamation and letting the angels know that you're curious and you're ready, and just invite them in. In the book, I talk about other things you can do, like you can set up a sacred space in your home. Many people have one already, but really viewing that as a kind of a window or a doorway for you to commune with spirit, commune with the divine. But quite simply, it can be as simple as you like. The key is make it a daily practice and really committing to giving it a shot. I call it the angel experiment because it's an experiment, but like any good experiment, it takes consistent effort and good documentation. So really paying attention to those little influences and those little miracles, and sometimes really big miracles that happen.
So how do the angels talk to us?
Yeah, they talk to us in a variety of ways. And so sometimes it could be subtle, like through our thoughts and feelings. Maybe we ask Spirit a question, and then we get a feeling, or we hear something. And in the beginning, it could feel like ourselves doing it or our own mind, but if it's a vision or something positive, something that feels loving, often it is a message from spirit. So it takes specific practice to do that way. Sometimes angels just talk to us through, sometimes they can communicate through our social media news feeds or through billboards or music. The key is learning to really slow down a little bit, open up your awareness. And every time something seems quote unquote coincidental, pay special attention to that thing, because those moments are often support from the other side.
Well, you brought up something I have a question about. So when we talk about social media and the angels, it almost seems like they don't really go together. Most people would think like social media could be the root of all evils. So how are the angels working in social media to connect with us?
You're right. Yeah. Some people think social media is the root of all evil. Some people think corporations are the root of all evil. Money is the root of all evil. But again, it's how we use it. And I believe angels will work through any medium to get our attention. So you may have had an experience where right at the right time, when you needed some support and guidance, you may be strolling through your news feed, if you do social media at all, and you see a quote, exactly what you needed to hear at the right time. To me, those moments are often indicative of spiritual guidance and divine guidance.
Well, and you kind of touched on something a little bit earlier too that I'd love for you to share with our listeners because I was a little confused. And so when you talk about like the differences between prayer and invocations, what's the difference between the two of them? Because I think a lot of times people get confused with that. I know I did until I read your book.
Yeah. Okay. So here's how I learned about the difference, and it's a real serious, like, energetic difference. It's an energetic pattern that we can pick up on, but I'll describe it for you. Often, how people do prayer is when they're in a great time of need, and they say, "Oh, please help me with this." And it's like this small human calling on this great force outside of them to come and rescue them. That's often the energy that people bring to it. And it's kind of like a separation between you and the divine, whereas an invocation acknowledges you and your inner spark as an embodied, part of the divine as well. And so what you're doing when you're invoking, and invocations sound a lot like prayers. It's really our intention, which is you're inviting this beautiful force of love to come and activate you, to activate your life, but you're bringing it inside of you. So it's like you're including yourself in this magical equation versus begging and pleading for rescuing and support. Now, I do both. I pray all the time. I still pray, like, please help and all this stuff. And I also do invocation to help remind me that I am also, in power, and I have choice to make in this world.
Yeah, that's so important when you look at that. And it's interesting because you're so right. I mean, I know when I do my prayers, a lot of times it's like, gosh, I need help with this, or can you alleviate stress of that? So a lot of times people are reaching out. And so when we do reach out to angels, are there specific angels we're supposed to reach out to, or is it just like, whatever angels nearby?
Yeah, all of the above. You can reach out to specific angels. In the beginning, when I started doing this angel work, I didn't know who the angels were. I didn't know them by name or anything like that. So I was just like, yo, angels, show me you're real. And that worked spectacularly. And as I advanced and grew and started working more specifically with angels, I found that working with specific angels is super fun and it works. And they like to play with us. So this 21-day magical adventure, different archangels came forward to bring different gifts to humans and to help open them up to different aspects of themselves and different aspects of life. So you can do all of the above. I feel like the angels are way more flexible than we are.
Well, and so as we're looking for signs, looking for that communication, are there things that we should be paying attention to, like coincidences and synchronicity?
Yes, absolutely. Pay attention to all of that stuff, big and little. And soon you start piecing together, especially when you commit to opening up your life and you make the declaration, okay, angels, show me you're real and help me with this, and this. And then you start working your practice. Paying attention to all of those things, because what we've learned in our society through our intense fixation with linear, irrational, logical thinking, and that's only half of our brain, right? There's the whole other half that's intuitive and creative and all that stuff. So because we've overemphasized that, many of us have forgotten how to really attune to the intuitive world and to pay attention to essentially magic and the magical moments. So when we see these little coincidences, we kind of discount them as quote unquote coincidences. And that's exactly what we shouldn't do. We should acknowledge them as magic, as wow, that was amazing. Write it down. And when you piece those moments together, you'll see this beautiful tapestry of divine support.
So as we're working our 21-day adventure, what are some of the things that we need to have in preparation? Are we doing journaling? Are there certain things that we need for when we do our prayers and invocations?
Yeah, I mean, I make some pro tips for success. I make some suggestions in here. So one of them is creating a little sacred space in your own home where you can indulge and play with the angels. Another one is having a journal, especially for this one, because this is an angel experiment. And it's really all about proving to yourself that you're supported by angels. And so with that, you're supposed to, write down all the cool, any synchronicities and all the cool things that happen. But really what's most important is just keeping an open mind and a readiness to play and a commitment to do this every day for 21 days. Most of us don't have the capacity or kind of, let things fall off the wagon. So I really try and ask people to commit to seeing this through, because miracles literally happen for people. Amazing things literally happen for people the more that they apply these techniques and practices.
So can angels help us with certain things like discovering our purpose or our soul mission? And if so, can you explain for our listeners what those things are?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for sure. The fact that I'm talking to you now and doing what I do, this is a really bizarre series of extraordinary events, all because of I feel the angels and the guidance that I receive. This life looks nothing like the life that I was living too long ago. I suffered massive depression for most of my life, and my life was pretty rough for most of my life until I encountered the angels. So even though I'm doing what I'm doing now, it's not. I want to explain purpose as I understand it, which is, a lot of people talk about life purpose as if it's something that you do with your life, like outer life. It's like a job, and you discover this job that you have to do that is of great service. And I don't really see life purpose like that. I see life purpose as something that's already in you, that is in the process of unfolding. And when you work, and it's like your unique medicine that you bring to the world, whether you're just communicating with your partner or your children or your community or the world. So we are constantly fulfilling our purpose, but we can do our purpose at different octaves. So we can just do it with our family. If you are designed for inspiring people, you can do that one-on-one, or you can inspire people on the millions. If you're designed for artistry and creativity, you can be an amazing doodler and make necklaces, or you can design massive buildings and design communities and cities. So we can play our purpose at a lot of different octaves. But what the angels help us with is to detox from the limits that we place on who we are and what we came here to do. And they can kind of guide you and show you your real medicine. Like, I find Archangel Michael is really the one who started kind of detoxing me and lighting up the path for me to believe in something bigger. For me to believe that I was capable of bringing more of my own unique medicine to more people. But that's not required. You don't have to hit the masses. You just have to be joyful. And to me, your purpose is about following the inner path of joy wherever your heart is guiding you, even if it's a scary change that is required of you.
It's interesting. It's usually those scary changes that are the pivotal points in our life that push us to another level. And so you look at that, and it might be scary at the moment, but we look back and we're like, hey, the angels have my back. I got through that.
Oh gosh, so much so. Yes, I talk to a lot of people, and how I talk to them about it is that, do work the path that's a little terrorizing, or maybe a lot terrorizing, but also extremely exciting. And that, if you have both of those elements, the answer is yes, follow that path, because that's very much what I have done, what so many of the other people that I know have done that have kind of breaking through to more peace and joy in their own life. And, for me to be so public now is already just, wow, that I had to walk through many thresholds of terror in order to get that, because in real life, I'm fairly introverted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I get it. I mean, it's not... you start talking about angels, and sometimes people are like, we need to find a padded room for this one, when you're really walking your path. I mean, I get that. I've been there, but you're so inspiring. You're helping so many people. And I'd love for you to share with us, some of your personal experiences with some of your clients, because I know they've had some great miracles happen.
Okay. So I have to tell you this one, because this just happened. One of my students who has trained with me in the Angel Alchemy Academy, she recently, she was in a mentorship of mine. She told me last year that she had been diagnosed with a very aggressive form of ovarian cancer, and that the doctors had recommended that she have surgery, of course, and chemotherapy. And what she did was, instead of just listening to the advice, which most of us would do, I mean, I would probably do it, she really got the strong guidance from the angels and from her soul that was not the route for her, that she was going to take a different route. So over the years, she started doing the energy practices that she learned in working with angels and with spirit. And just last month, she messaged me and said that the doctors are baffled and that she's 100% clear of cancer. She had all the batteries of tests. They don't know how to explain it, but that she is cancer-free.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. And what,
isn't it so cool?
Oh, you just gotta love that. But there's so much to be said about trusting your intuition and knowing what's right for you, because people will, and we're not telling people not to follow their doctor's advice. That's not what this is about. But when
absolutely not.
Yeah, because I would agree with you. If my doctor told me that, I'd probably do the same thing. Be like, oh, well, I need to schedule this stuff up and get this taken care of.
Exactly.
But trusting your intuition is so important. And a lot of times people seem to, just let that go to the sidelines. They don't really pay attention to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's what's so important. I think that's one of the biggest blessings that I received from working with angels, is that they really do help attune you to your inner voice and your inner truth. And it almost is along the lines of the life purpose. When you can hear that sweet voice inside of you that's trying to guide you and set you free and help you make different choices that are not based in fear, but are based in love and inspiration and hope and possibility, then our lives do. They change. And, as much as the angels helped me, I had to do something. I had to believe in that other voice for once, not the one that was really constantly trying to keep me small and tear me down. And so, yeah, this woman is so inspirational. The one who listens to the doctor, she's like, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. And I have to tell you, Marianne, what's so hilarious about her is that she knew she wasn't going to do surgery. She wasn't going to do chemo, but this girl is a chain smoker, and she kept chain smoking the whole time.
Wow.
Because she just felt like it's part of her medicine. Yeah. So she's, on so many levels, that woman is beating to her own drum, and it's working for her.
Yeah, that would probably not work for a lot of other people at all.
I know. Of course, we're not advocating, but again,
not at all.
And she, when she's telling me the story, it was like a Zoom. When she told me she had cancer, it was like a Zoom thing, right? Mm-hmm. And she's smoking on our call, and I was like, well, I was trying to kind of be the voice of reason. Like, don't you think maybe you wanna, But there's no talking to her. She's stubborn.
Mm-hmm. She's decided what she's decided. Well, and it's interesting. I was actually really surprised. There's a portion that I know it's a question you get asked a lot, and I was a little bit shocked, with people asking you if working with angels is like an evil thing. And I'd love for you to explain a little bit about that, because I guess this is a belief system. And kind of when we talk about the lady with the miracles, she has this belief system that smoking's part of her cure. But if someone has a belief system that talking to angels might be evil, where do you go with that?
Well, yeah, I don't. I'm not here to talk people into something they're uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. But I do take issue. It does get tiring. I have to tell you, it does get tiring when people are calling this intuitive work that we're doing evil. And it's like, okay, is curing cancer evil? Is being happy and joyous evil? And it comes from a passage in the Bible from thousands of years ago, and that intuitive work, and there's a whole list of things that is proclaimed. And so I find it's really mostly the fundamental, extreme right wing, not right wing, but extreme fundamentalist Christians that I get that kind of heat from. So yeah, I don't try and talk people into it. I just say, to each their own, do what's bringing you joy and bliss, but definitely try not to step on other people when they're doing their best to bring some good to each other.
Yeah. Because it really is, an interesting thing because people are doing different things. And, there's that saying, I know I've used this before, but, if the ocean is enlightenment, there are many rivers that lead to it, so whatever works for one person may not work for somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. And my, I don't come at this angel thing from a religious perspective. I feel like the angels transcend religion. Many religions across the world, including indigenous cultures across the world, acknowledge that there are benevolent beings here to support us. And so I do my best to strip away the dogma from it and take it into actual real world practice, support, healing, and love.
Yeah, without a doubt. Is that some of the things you want not only listeners, but our readers to take away from your book and the work that you do?
Well, which part?
That you really, about love, about being, that really it's a message of love.
Yes, it absolutely is. I mean, this was news to me. And I talk about the what happened to me in the book. And, there's a big wild, earth-shattering miracle that happened to me. And then I, really the path that I started going on was this just path of love, which was a bizarre path for me at the time because it was not indicative of the life that I had the first 35 years of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about love.
You got to love that, right? Well,
yeah, you got to love that.
Well, and here we are, we're coming up on the holidays. I mean, the angel experiment is such a great gift for a stocking stuffer or, those hard to find gifts for people. I think it's a great gift for that. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about the work that you do?
They can go to my website. They can go to CorinGrillo.com, check it out. They can get the book there as well. And also, I have a community on Facebook called the 7-Day Miracle Challenge. You can actually get the 7-Day Miracle Challenge on my website. It's a free opt-in, and it's a 7 email sequence where we step-by-step take you through how to open your life to angels. And then the book really kicks it and knocks it out of the ballpark with that. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook very easily. So Corin Grillo.
Oh, Corin, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Corin. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Angel Experiment. The Angel Experiment is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Again, if you'd like to connect with Corin, you can at her website, CorinGrillo.com, for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.